Reading 81 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teachings of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 1. Birdlip, July 17, 1943. Commentary on Self-Observation and Eyes. 3. Observation of Eyes. After a certain time in the work, a person should be able to recognize quite clearly one or two eyes in himself. He will, of course, be unable to do so if he still remains wholly under the influence of imaginary eye, for in that case he will have the illusion that he is one eye, one solid person, one permanent ego. This will prevent him from even beginning to look seriously for eyes in himself. But as you know, the work teaches that the personality is made of a large number of egos, which all call themselves I and take charge of us at different times. Thus, our life in the hands of a great many people, unknown to us, who live in and on us, some of whom may be desirable but many undesirable. Ordinarily, we do not see these people, mistaking them for ourselves. This is a curious illusion if you think about it. Actually, you should be constantly thinking of it and noticing how it works. Then you may begin to see into the trick and how clever it is and how simple. Some egos in us are very dangerous and should never be allowed either to speak through us or to call themselves I. However, this is easy to say and very difficult to do. Some are dangerous in one way, others in another way. Let us take suspicious eyes as an extreme example. These eyes are amongst the most dangerous in us. They have an extraordinary power of binding a man or woman to their influence. Their action lies in transforming things, or rather connecting them up in another way. Their representation in the intellectual center is very subtle. They transpose facts to fit in with their central theory, that is, with the nature of the suspicion. They alter the arrangement of things in the memory and in thought so that everything seems to corroborate and confirm everything else. In this way, they build up an organized mental system, not of truth but of falsity. In the emotional center, they arouse their own peculiar feelings, which are distinct from jealousy or envy, or revenge or hatred, and give a curious excitement like all destructive emotions. The action of suspicious eyes is such that they in a short time spread like a ferment in all directions within us and set or fix the materials of the mind and emotions as if they were coagulated. They also act on the moving center, giving rise to stealthiness, odd silences of the bodily movements, and so on. Suspicion takes everything on the lowest plane and is therefore closely connected with the sin against the Holy Ghost, mentioned in the Gospels, which refers to seeing the worst side of everything and everyone. Suspicious eyes are fond of whispered conversations, if you notice them in action. Now, the idea of the work is to make one big observing eye that stands outside the personality and takes photographs of all the eyes in the personality. The more photographs you take, the stronger will the observing eye become, and the more chances you will have of coming into a new life, freed from the compulsion and habits of the old life. But apart from the fact that it is difficult to take any photographs at all, at least to begin with, it becomes clearer later on that some eyes are exceptionally difficult to photograph. This is because of their hypnotic power over us. Remember that all eyes are specialized, that is, of different kinds. One is fond of this, another of that. One likes to say or do this, another to say or do that, and so on. Some of these eyes attract us more strongly than others do. Their inner hypnotizing power is greater. This applies particularly to suspicious eyes. These eyes present in everyone. These eyes present in everyone may play only a small role, or may assume far greater proportions. They are amongst the most subjective of the eyes, and can eventually employ the reasoning power of the formatory center for their own purpose, so that a person begins to live in another, inner world of his own invention, quite distinct from the objective or real situation. Every eye makes, as it were, a little momentary world into which we pass when we identify with it. But suspicious eyes, if consented to and nourished by the will, invade all the inner life and organize it into another and permanent world of hell. The power of observing eye, not to identify with what it observes, varies with the kind of eye it observes. You must all have noticed this. The hypnotizing power of suspicious eyes, like that of jealous or revengeful eyes, or envying eyes, is so strong that the independent power of observing eye is often overcome. That is, observing eye identifies with what it observes. This will not be the case so easily if observing eye has behind it many strong thoughts about the work, that is, some definite work eyes, and also strong feelings. But when people take hold of the work, and indeed the whole idea of esotericism, very loosely and in a trivial way, and therefore actually place small value on it, then observing eye is very weak and unsupported, and is easily swamped like a little boat without keel, rudder, sail, compass, or master. A weak observing eye is due to lack of seeing what the work is about, and if one does not see what the work is about, it means that one does not try to think about it. Esotericism, throughout the ages, is something very big. One cannot take hold of it with little trivial eyes. Best not even to attempt to do so. Let me say one more thing about this extreme example that we are taking of suspicious eyes. The less you realize your own deceitfulness, the more will you tend to be suspicious of others. The key is to see that they are eyes formed by long habit, that you can separate from and not go with, not believe in, not consent to. Of course, if you consent to every eye of the moment in yourself, you are not working, and you do not understand what work on yourself means. Work on yourself means to get into a new way of living consciously, inside yourself, instead of mechanically. It means to work against your mechanical ways of reacting to everything, and so on. Work on yourself means simply work on yourself. This begins when you observe yourself and begin to see different eyes in you that have preyed on you and enslaved you all your life. But all this is impossible if you imagine you are one person. Another set of eyes is based on slander. Their activity, and in fact the delight of these eyes, lies in various forms of slandering, or vilifying, or twisting. This constitutes in the work one bad form of wrong talking in general. Their strength varies in different people. When they are marked, a person must struggle to see them and separate from them with all his available willingness and desire. They are very dangerous eyes because they act against the person himself or herself eventually. That is, they turn on you and slander yourself and drag you down internally, and so prevent you from understanding, slandering everything you try to do, even quite sincerely. Remember that there is a reason why the devil was called the slanderer in the Gospels. Try to observe when you are slandering, both in your mind and in words, and notice and remember it, and try to see that it is certain eyes in you that are doing it, and notice what they wish to say and feel pleasure in, and how they come to wake up in you and become active, and so on. Eyes that belong to the domain of suspicion, slander, hatred, revenge, envy, jealousy, and so on, must be struggled with to the end of one's life. To realize that you need not go with these various habitual eyes is the dawn of a new life. It is the beginning of understanding what personal work means. Yes, it is actually so. Nothing sentimental or foolish is meant here. But this dawn does not come as long as you take yourself as one and live under the hypnotic power of imaginary eye, which is a cloak for all the different eyes in you, and worn by each in turn. Remember that the secret lies in seeing these eyes as not you, or rather as not I. If you take them as I, then nothing can be done. You are standing on the plank that you are trying to lift, and that is impossible. You are standing in your own way. Now let us speak of different kinds of eyes, some of which may also be very important. Some time ago we spoke of worry and worrying eyes. These form a strong group of eyes in most people. Their action is very interesting to observe. Their sole object is to upset you and make you depressed or, in short, worried. They lead to nothing else. They are quite useless, as are so many eyes in us. But you have to notice for yourself by direct and sustained self-observation what they do and say and what their main object is. Worrying eyes act in two main ways. You all have your worrying eyes about one another, about business, about money, about your state of health, and so on. And you also have to meet other people's worrying eyes. Try to see even one worrying eye distinctly in yourself. Study it. See how it only loves to exhaust you and leads nowhere. Then you will see others. Also notice how some of your worrying eyes connect themselves with the work. You begin to worry about the work in one way or another, whether you are working, and so on. They are like flies and can settle on nothing. Can settle on anything. They are all small eyes living in small parts of centers. They seize when we get into directed attention. We might imagine that worrying eyes have a kind of foreman who looks out for jobs to give them. If you cannot see your own worrying eyes, notice those in other people. How as soon as one worry is over, they almost arrange to have something else to worry over. These eyes disperse force and exhaust people and cause illnesses. They are, so to speak, rampant in Western people. Now let us take eyes that like to complicate and muddle things. They form a considerable group of somewhat various eyes. Their object, of course, is not to help you, but to make everything extraordinarily difficult. They delight in misunderstanding everything. They delight in calling your attention to something unimportant, in delaying you, especially last-minute eyes, as Mr. Ouspensky once called them. Eyes that come onto the stage just as you have to go somewhere or catch a train and so on. Again, let us take the sensational eyes, eyes that love to create a scene, to get excited, and which lead even into hysteria. Their object is to exaggerate everything, and when they express themselves in the moving center, they like to scream or make violent movements. In the intellectual center, they shout gramophone sentences, such as, "I can't stand this any longer," or "This is too much." They produce frantic states, which again only exhaust and deplete the nervous system. They are our own enemies. Only people like them. You must realize that a great many eyes, in fact most of them, are against you and wish to destroy you in various ways, openly or more secretly. That is why we have to be awake towards ourselves. Now, about negative eyes, which are often exceptionally subtle and dangerous, I am not going to speak in this paper. I will only say that negative eyes form a very great part of our inner life, and that they always eat our force and weaken us, both for life and for the work. There's only one thing that can fight for us here, and that is the work itself, and it will fight for us only in relation to our evaluation of it. Negative eyes are created by life, as are other eyes. Life as third force keeps them alive. The work is a contrary third force that weakens all eyes formed by life, save those that can understand esoteric ideas. That is, those who begin to understand that there is another way of living and thinking and valuing and feeling and acting, and wish to reinterpret everything that happens to us in terms of another set of ideas. Then again, notice eyes that like to be ill and attract illness. The habit of illness can be formed early, and that means that a group of eyes form themselves that wish to occupy the stage whenever possible. They wish to make you ill. It used to be taught by G that 80% of our illnesses have a psychological cause of this kind. That is, are due to eyes, just as in the same way, if you form the habit of taking some drug, the eyes, formed and nourished by it, will seek to dominate and destroy you. Now, look for different kinds of eyes and try to observe them practically. All eyes are specialized. More or less, similar eyes form groups, and these may form personalities. For example, a doctor's medical eyes will be various, but will form a personality within the personality in general. Or a person's social eyes will do the same, etc. Often there are useful eyes in us that have been formed earlier and which we do not nourish in afterlife. This is a great mistake. People often drop their best eyes in this way quite early. They get swamped by life and its exigencies and make no effort in continuity with what they have already gained. Then it is like a garden becoming overgrown with weeds, that is, with useless, poor, or negative eyes. Everything in nature has to fight to make effort. Animals and plants cannot, so far as we know, make psychological effort, but we know that we can. All this work is effort. Not effort such as lifting a weight, but psychological effort on this inner world called oneself. We have specialized eyes formed by previous interests and education. One eye is fond of poetry, another of mathematics, another of music, another of writing, another of reading, and so on. When our first education ends, very often these eyes fade and become weak because they are not nourished by attention. That is, we make no further effort about them. To direct the conscious attention in anything requires effort. This is psychological effort. Attention, will, and consciousness are very closely connected. Once we have started on our second education, that is, the work, we should all know to some extent when we should make some effort in connection with useful eyes. Then, if you notice you do not, try to observe what eyes prevent you from doing so. This is seeing, second force in you. That is the force of resistance to effort. When we leave good and useful eyes unvisited too long, they lose heart, as it were. It is much the same inside as outside. What I'm saying is that in regard to different eyes in oneself, one should also work on good eyes. It is not merely a question of working on bad eyes. The work has two sides. It walks on two legs. When you observe genuinely good and useful eyes that want to know, to be taught more, do not neglect them. And this applies to work eyes. You cannot work on bad eyes if you neglect work eyes. That is, if you do not keep them alive by thought and feeling and effort. It is necessary to strengthen work eyes not only by remembering what you are doing, but by re-understanding the esoteric ideas of the work again and again, and constantly relearning and re-seeing the meaning of the work until it forms your sky. This strengthens the side of observing eye and makes it possible for it to keep outside and to resist the influence of what it observes. All new life and inner vigor forms round observing eye, which leads finally up to real eye. When this is reached, then this world, which is really, of course, a school, has fulfilled its task, and you have fulfilled your task in regard to it. But this goal is very far away from us all at present. Now, as regards the question asked at the end of the paper read last time, how can we make use of the observations we have made on ourselves? Let me say first that you must realize that you can do nothing in regard to changing yourself unless you observe yourself. Self-observation must precede all change of oneself. You cannot change what you do not observe. To observe a thing in yourself is to know it. This begins self-knowledge, and the first step in self-knowledge is to see that you are not one. If you know nothing of yourself and your many eyes, how can you change yourself? You have to see what is meant here very clearly. I ask you to discuss this point later on. I will now quote 5 answers to the above question given when the paper was read here on Tuesday last. 1. The observations that we have made help us to have aim. They give us force to go on working. 2. Our observations begin to create work memory. They cause an alarm bell to ring next time the event happens. We can observe the same thing more deeply next time. They increase consciousness. Your observation collects, 3. Your observation collects eyes round observing eye. It will be a step towards inner separation. This answer is obscure. 4. Our observations will make us less mechanical next time. And 5. Our observations help us to see our being